Bron Breakker has officially joined the SmackDown roster. Nick Aldis, another great signing by the SmackDown GM, as he's brought Bron Breakker to SmackDown for his official main roster call-up from NXT, even though, as I record this, Breakker is still one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions with Baron Corbin, where he has been doing a fantastic job, I think, with that team. There's just something about those two that seemingly works well. On paper, it may have seemed like one of those teams where just like, how does this make sense for Bron Breakker? But they've done a really good job as a team. And it's also paired him with a veteran wrestler that, perhaps he's been able to learn from in those kind of things. But all of that combined, does that make Bron Breakker potentially the next big star for WWE, as he has now joined the main roster after a long time? I think everyone's sort of speculating when he was going to make that jump to the main roster officially, and he's here. We saw him in the Royal Rumble this year, and now we know that he will be a part of SmackDown moving forward, and I think this is going to be someone that's going to be fascinating to watch. Not just, initially here on the SmackDown brand, but it's going to be the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next year. Because keep in mind that they are bringing Bron Breakker up here as he is 26 years old. He's going to turn 27, let me make sure I've got the birthday right, in October. So it's going to be very interesting to know that this is someone who initially, as soon as we saw him in NXT, you understood that he sort of had all the tools needed to be a huge success. Whether it's just the lineage, right? He's a Steiner, someone who has the history, his family, all these other things. You could tell that at least had that working for him, was the fact that, he's coming from the Steiner family. They've had success in professional wrestling. That's one part of the equation. But then when you see the guy and you're like, this guy's built like a brick house. I mean, he is just, he's got all the physical tools that we know WWE over the years loves when it comes to building up those bigger stars. And you look at just that aspect of it, knowing that there's so much more for him. He's not even to his prime yet. Like, he is still, as I say, he's 26 years old. And so the sky is the limit just based on the physical attributes of that. So you've got the historical context with the Steiner family. You've got the physical tools. We've seen the personality, I think, grow since he started NXT. And again, that's kind of playing off the stuff with Baron Corbin. Remember, this is also a guy that WWE felt comfortable enough to put in the spot to take the chokeslam from The Undertaker whenever he appeared on NXT at that one point. And so we know that Breakker has sort of been, I don't even call him the chosen one, right? But we knew when he first started, and kind of that revamp of NXT, everything with like the, colors and all this other stuff, right? It was a bright new sort of introduction for NXT, which has sort of gone back to the, black and gold type era, just with a lot of, wild characters now, which I think makes NXT kind of fun and sets it apart. But you just knew that the way they saw Bron Breakker from the start, there was always going to be kind of that eye on him from the standpoint that, again, fair or unfair, he's a Steiner, and he's going to be judged, can he meet that expectation for what those guys, his dad, his uncle, what they achieved inside of the ring throughout their careers, whether, in WCW, NWA, WWE, all this other stuff. So it's just, can he match that same, level? It's obviously different than Cody, but it is kind of that, hey, you've got someone had a very successful father in professional wrestling, and now he's always going to be kind of viewed within that lens. But I think the difference here with Breakker is that you're seeing, like, this isn't kind of a tag team situation like you got with the Steiner brothers, even though Breakker is in a tag team, although he and Baron Corbin are probably not exactly the Steiner brothers in terms of, they're, first of all, they're not brothers, and they aren't presented like the Steiner brothers were necessarily. But you've got Breakker, who singles-wise, I think is very clearly someone who they can continue to develop, continue to build up, and it's just growing those skills to the point to where he seems to have a lot of the it factors that you need to be a mega star in WWE. And I want to say this too, like, it's unfair to say, of course, it's unfair, I think, to say right now that he can't get there. Because remember, as I said earlier, he's 26. He's got plenty of time to get there. You think about the ages of everyone that's kind of, in that top stratosphere right now in WWE. they're not 26, right? Like most of them are not 26. If you look at kind of, everybody else and what they've been able to achieve, it maybe has taken them a bit of time, and this is just a start for Bron Breakker. And maybe it's also probably a little unfair to even, for me and other people, but hey, it's wrestling. We like to talk about it, right? To even start making those questions of, is he the next big thing in WWE? Is he the next huge star that's going to go on to main event, 8 WrestleManias and all this other stuff? But it's fun to think about that because we see the potential in this guy. And I think that's where, the conversation starts, is because you don't have this conversation about everybody. You have it about the people that you see that they seem to have the tools in place to get there. And you want to see them succeed, right? We want to see Bron Breakker succeed and become that next big star. He's not going to do it a year from now. It may be 5 years from now. It may be more than that. But I think we know, and I think we at least feel confident now in kind of how Triple H has, sort of uses certain talents and how he spotlights certain talents. And I think even alone just giving him a segment on SmackDown, right, to make his signing feel like a big deal. Like you heard Corey Graves and Wade Barrett, as soon as the signing, was announced, and you can kind of hear them on commentary. Like one of them said he's a badass, right? And then the other's just like, what a day. Like whatever they said specifically, they're making this feel like a huge deal, just like they're kind of doing with Jade Cargill, right? Because I think you look at those two in particular, and you can see them as the future of their respective divisions in WWE. Jade in the women's division, Bron Breakker in the men's division. Like you can see these two themselves. There are many others you can throw into that category. Tiffany Stratton's been brought up into the mix. I've said before, I think she's definitely someone they have their eye on in terms of being one of the future cornerstones of the women's division. And so the way they're spotlighting these young talents, putting them in a position now to kind of be seen as stars from the start. And we know Breakker, for anyone that's watched NXT, even if every WWE main roster fan doesn't watch NXT week to week, you know who Bron Breakker is. You at least have seen, again, whether it's through the Royal Rumble, whether it's through the other stuff WWE has done to sort of promote him since he made his start in NXT, you at least have him on your radar. But now it's the tag team championship stuff with Breakker, with Baron Corbin. Sorry, it's like get all the bees there going on. But now you've got him officially signed to SmackDown, so you have a little bit of the context before he gets there. Now he's there. Of course, as always, it's how do they push him from here? What are the programs they give him? Like, how do they sort of bring him up? It's completely different, right, than, let's say, what was it? How many years ago was that? Karrion Kross gets brought up. You're thinking, okay, they bring him up, and then he loses to Jeff Hardy in, 3 minutes or something like that. I think you're going to have a little bit more protection of Bron Breakker here in terms of how they're going to build him up. And there have been, even some people were predicting that he was going to be the one to end the streak for Gunther at WrestleMania 40. Could they still get there? I mean, they're on different brands. I don't know if that's necessarily stopped WWE from doing matches they want to do in the past. They could maybe still get there if they wanted to. It would seem unlikely just because Breakker is signed with SmackDown now. But that, I think, is how highly you see sort of a lot of fans, maybe not everybody, but again, I think it's going to take time for Breakker to sort of establish that rapport with fans on the main roster, just like anybody new to the table. And he is younger. There's still things he can work on. There are still various aspects of probably the character and all this other stuff. But he's also someone that doesn't really need a character, does he? I mean, he's just like, he can show up and be like, hey, I'm Bron Breakker, and I'm going to like tear you apart, and I'm a Steiner, and boom, that's all you need. But we know there'll be more layers to it if he's going to be, an eventual top champion in WWE. But I'm excited about the possibilities with Bron Breakker. I mean, so much so that I'm doing a video on it. Like, I think that he's someone that, watching his matches, you can tell he's gotten better. As I said, there's still things he's going to be able to work on, whether it's from, promo standpoint, all that. But those are things that come with time. And he's got plenty of time as someone who is just now essentially getting started in his career. But it's exciting to know that when you see this guy grow so far as a wrestler in WWE, you see him now getting this opportunity on SmackDown. There are a world of possibilities for Bron Breakker to be the next big star, I think, for WWE on the men's side. And I'm really curious to see how Triple H, creative, all of that, kind of how they spend their time now on Bron Breakker over the next little while, because that's going to be very important. It's important to kind of initially set him in that spot to where he's seen like a big deal, and then you just add those layers from there to there to there, and you just keep going with it until, again, he becomes one of your next big things in WWE. So we'll see what happens with Bron Breakker on SmackDown. We'd love to know what you guys think. What do you think? Does Bron have it? Does he have everything you need to this point to see him potentially as one of the next big stars in WWE in the future? Would love to know what you think in the comments. New channel, hit that subscribe button. Love talking wrestling with you guys. So let me know what you think about Bron Breakker joining SmackDown. And do you think, as I said, that Bron has what it takes to be one of the next big stars in WWE?